Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial on complete.NET Web APIs. So today I'll be showing you about logging. So for that we'll be using again the mediator pipeline behaviors. So we'll create a separate pipeline behavior for logging, and the library we'll be using for logging is Serilog, so that we can do some structured logging. I'll show you what structured logging is all about. So if you can see, we had previously created a pipeline behavior for validation. So we can create pipeline behaviors for various features like validation, logging, authorization, caching, etc. And it depends on completely depends on your requirement whether you want to create just one pipeline for various features, which does the validation, which does the logging, or you create separate ones. But I usually prefer creating separate pipelines. So let's go ahead. I'll create a pipeline for logging. So let me create another class. I'll name it as logging pipeline behavior. Logging pipeline behavior. I'll remove this, call it as public sealed class logging pipeline behavior. And again, we'll set it up as generic for all classes so that we can use it for all commands. Let's set up the generic constraints, and let's implement the interface here. Yeah. So now what we'll do is we'll just wire it up in dependency injection. So if I go to dependency injection, and we see that we already have dependency injection done for validation pipeline behavior. Similarly, we'll do it for logging pipeline behavior. So if I go to dependency injection, and the way, so if we have two pipeline behaviors now, and the order in which they'll be hit is depending on the order in which they are registered in dependency injection. So I usually want all my other pipeline behaviors to hit first, and then at the last we'll be hitting the logging pipeline behavior, so that we can log the recent items. So what I'll do is I'll copy and make changes here and just rename this to logging pipeline behavior, and that's it. So now we have the logging pipeline behavior class ready. Now what we need to do is we need to configure Serilog and first download the NuGet package. So for that, what I'll be doing is I'll go to NuGet, manage NuGet packages, and on Serilog, and the one which I'll be downloading is Serilog.ASP.NET Core. Yeah, which is this one, and download the latest stable version. Once we've downloaded that, let's have a look at the dependencies. Yeah, so once that's done, the next thing is configuring Serilog. And if you see by default with .NET, uh, there is already structured logging available. So if you see in the app settings file, we already have logging here. So similarly, we can set up logging for Serilog. So, uh, so what I'll do is I'll remove this and I'll set up the logging for Serilog. So what we can do is we'll remove this and I'll call this as Serilog. And this setting of the configuration you can find in the official documentation of Serilog. which is this. So I'll put the link in the description of the video, so you guys can just check it out. And yeah, so Serilog, and then the next thing is the using property, which where you can specify what type of syncs to use. So if we just go to the documentation and check provided syncs, so there are various syncs which uh, Serilog provides. A sync is basically the way the log is displayed, whether you want to show it in the console or whether you want to show it in the file. There are various types available. You can also have a SQL sync where it is directly, you can configure a table and it starts logging to the table. There is email. There are a lot of syncs here. So, and these are the names of the syncs. So in the using property, we need to specify the names of the syncs. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'll just use two syncs, that is console and file. Then the next important thing which we need to configure is the minimum logging level. Okay, so I'll tell you what that is about. So if you see minimum logging level, default information. So it is whenever we have logging, we have three types of log levels. It can be information, warning, error, fatal, depending upon the criticality of the message. What this does is this setting allows you to tell the logger by default which information you need to log. So if you just set the minimum log level to information, it will set up all the messages, or it will display all the messages, which is sometimes uh, too much of a garbage for production scenarios. So basically what we can do is for development, we can set it to information, and for production, we can set it to either warning or error, so that only it only logs error messages and does not log information messages. Okay, and so this so specifically what is this doing is this is overriding the default log messages it logs for system related and Microsoft related uh, operations which are happening. So for that, we have overridden it to warning so that the log does not get full. Now, the next thing is enrichers. So there's a concept of enrichers here. So since this is structured logging, in structured logging, what we can do is we can uh, add certain metadata based on which we can uh, then filter the logs. I'll show you what exactly that is. So let's add the enrichers now. So I'll add from log context with machine name, process ID, thread ID, so that we can include these in the log. Okay, and for that, I will also need to download some NuGet packages. So let's go and do that. So I'll just go to manage NuGet packages and search for Serilog dot enrichers. So we'll download Serilog environment enricher. Then we'll also download the thread and the process enrichers so that we can use the thread which it is logging for, and also the process ID, so that we can show this information in our structured logs. So once we've done that, let's have a look at the dependencies. We've downloaded all these three and we have set up these enrichers here. Now the next thing is setting up the syncs, where to write to. So that is done here, write to. So as we know, we have selected two syncs, console and file. So this is an array now. The first thing is we'll put the name of the first sync, that is console. We call this as console. And the next one will be file. So let me put the next one here. Yeah, so this is the name, and then there are arguments like path, so where the log file will be created. So the ideal place we do it is in the app data folder, followed by the organization or the application name, then logs, and then log -.txt. So what it does here is it by default adds the date on which the log file is created so that it acts as a unique file name. Then the rolling interval. So rolling interval is it can have values like day, month, week, hour, minutes. So this is based on which, based on this setting, it creates a new log file. So with this setting, what it will do is every day it will create a new log file. And there's also another setting called roll on file size limit, which is set to true. So what this does is the default size limit, which is set by Serilog, you can just check it in the documentation, is 1 GB. So if the log file crosses 1 GB also, it will create another log file. And then the last thing is the output template. So this is the way the data will be displayed in the log file. So I prefer using this. So first thing is it will show the timestamp, then it will show the log level, then it will show the message, the new line, and the actual exception. Okay. I will also create another file, which will be the JSON file so that I can show you how structured logging works. I'll just paste it here. So if you see file, then arguments, again, there will be a path. And this time it will be JSON log.json. And I'll include this formatter here, serilog.formatting.json.json formatter. Okay. Once that's done, so our Serilog settings are set. Now the next thing what we'll need to do is configure it. For that, we'll go to program files. And the first thing we'll do is make sure that our application startup is covered and logged. So sometimes what happens is when you host the API in some servers, and if there are certain prerequisites missing, there can be errors or exceptions at the application startup itself. So that means your Swagger page only will not be visible. Instead of that, it will give you some server exceptions. So to cover those well and log those, we'll create a try catch block here itself. So we'll have try catch, and then finally, yeah. And before this, what I'll do is we'll configure the log configuration, new configuration. So let's do it here. Yeah. If you see, what I'm doing is creating a configuration builder, and I'm reading the app settings file for Serilog configuration, which we have just created in app settings. And then what it will do is it will create a logger based on those app settings. Okay, once this is done, the next thing is all this content which is there, let's move it to the try block. Let's move everything to try block so that if there is any exception here, it's caught here. And while catching it, what we'll do is we'll call it log dot fatal. So this will be a fatal exception. And the way the logging works here is it will first take the exception and then the message template. So if you see, this is not a string message, it's a message template. So here you can add your structured logging. So what I mean is I'll just say application name. So you can give any name here or any variable here, which can then act as a property in your structured logging. So I'll call this as application name failed to start up. So what it says is application name failed to start. And then we can give the value of the application name. And let's add the application name to our global constants. So if we just go to common utilities, and global constants, what we'll add here is application name. So I'll just call this as public const string application name. So maintaining a global constants file is very much convenient because you can have uh, it well organized here instead of having all these hard-coded strings everywhere. So I'll just call it as organization dot API. So this is the name of our application. Yeah, so here I can then just specify global constants dot application name. So this is basically like the string formatter string format functionality we had. But so if you see, what it will do is it will replace this variable with this value here in the message. But in the metadata, which you'll see in the JSON file, you will be able to get the value for this application name so that we can then use it for filtering and structured logging. So this is what structured logging is all about. And finally, what we'll do is we'll say log close and flush. Okay. So now let's try to run and see what we get here. Okay, so let's open the app data folder and keep so that we can check if the logs are getting generated. So once we've configured this, we are good to go. Let's check if we need to specify anything else. Yes. So one more thing we need to do is just tie it up with dependency injection. So we go to application layer, configuration, dependency injection, and here we need to just add services dot add Serilog, because so that we can use it as a dependency. And one more place we need to add is here. So if we go to program files, what we'll do is we'll also add a log message here, which will say that so this is information application is starting up, and we'll put the application name. And let's that once that's done, we'll also need to use Serilog request logging. So just after HTTPS redirection, what we'll do is we'll paste in here. So app.use Serilog request log. Okay, so once this is done, we are pretty much set up here. Let's try to execute and check how it is working. So it should give us a log message that application has started. So once we execute this, let's see if a log file is created. and our API is created. And now let's go to the folder here. And if you see, we have a folder created for logging when in the name of the application organization.application, then logs. And here are the two logs which are created. So if you see, it has created a log file with the particular date as the timestamp or date stamp. And if I click this, it will show me that uh, whatever we have configured in that format, it is showing. So it is showing the timestamp, the level, error log level, logging level is information. And if you see, it is showing us the or the organization.api. That is the application name. So it is giving us the message template which we have created, that is organization API is starting up. And this is the default logging, since we have the minimum log level, which is configured to information. It is giving us default information of the request as well. Let's see another thing. So now what we'll do is we'll try to make this application fail at startup itself and see if it works. So what we'll do is throw new exception. Say your API does not start up because of some prerequisite issue. So I'll say weird exception occurred while starting the API. Okay. So now it should throw an exception while creating or while starting the API, and let's see if that's logged. Yeah, so if you see, I think we have already an exception. So the API couldn't start up because of that. And let's see the log. And you see, this is how it is logging now. The It first logged that API is starting up, and then it is logging the fatal error. So it was fatal. Organization API failed to start. And on the new line, so based on the template we've configured, it is showing us the exception. And this is the exact exception which I've given. Okay. So that's how this is logging in the text file. So now let me show you the JSON file here and show how structured logging can help you in filtering the messages. So if I just come here and just organize this JSON, so it is giving you the timestamp, the level which is fatal, then this is the message template which we have set up, then this is the exact exception which is coming, and there are certain properties. So if you see now, whatever structured logging we can do, so it is considering all our template values as properties. So application name is this. And these are the enricher values we had added: machine name, process ID, thread ID, etc. Okay, so this is how you can then use this JSON file or JSON content of structured logging, and this can be consumed by another application which can help you in forming or creating a custom monitoring and error logging application. Or this can also be used by third-party monitoring and logging applications like SEQ. So maybe we'll cover it up in another tutorial, but and that's not for the scope of this tutorial. Okay, so let's close this, don't save. Yeah. So now the next thing is we'll just remove this from here. Yeah, so now we've set the logging. So let's go ahead and tie it up with the logging behavior which we have created, logging behavior pipeline. So we'll just inject the dependency here. That is, we just have to use ilogger of the particular class which we are using. And then I'm mapping it in the constructor. And then let's see how we can log it here. So now if you see, we'll first log the information, starting the request name and request at date time, so that this is how we can use these properties in structured logging. And I'm just specifying the name of the request. So whatever command is happening, it will log the name there and the date time UTC. Then it will execute await next. It will actually execute the handler. If there is any error, it will log the error here. And finally, it will say the request completed. So this is log information and this is log error. So now let's check by executing a command how it is working. So let's go here. Yeah, so let's clear the logs first. You just delete this and start it again so that we know what exactly it is logging. And for now, our default error log, the minimum level of logging is default to information. So it will log all the requests. If I go to logs here, the log is created, it is started. And now let's try to execute a command. So I'll try to get the companies. So the request is successful. We've got the result and let's see what it has logged. So if I go to logs, it shows me that it is logging this. So if you see here, that it is by default giving me that this particular request is executed, but I think the pipeline behavior has not hit. So let's check. Maybe I think there's no error logging. So let me check that. Are we using error or for this? Let's go to companies query. Yeah. So that's it did not hit because we haven't configured error or for this endpoint. So let's see endpoint for which we have configured error or. That's because it is based on error or. So if the response is error or, then only it will hit. So let's try to add an employee and check because we have already set it up for that. So if we go to add employee and I'll try to create a new employee, let's say add a developer, Sarah Jane, age 35. Okay, so let's execute this. So the new employee is created. Let's have a look at that. And yes, Sarah Jane is created. And now let's check what the logs are showing. If you see now, the logs are showing exactly what we have logged in the request here. So So first we are logging, starting the request name, and after the handler is executed, it will show us it's completed. So that's what it is showing here. You see starting, and then this is the request name, add employee command, and the date time. And it is also logging the default request information. And since this is info, and it is doing that because our default log level is still information. So let me also show you the JSON file which is created so that we can then classify the templates. So if you see message template, properties, and now the properties have various properties like request name, date time, source context, action ID. These are various properties which you can get and have. It has the machine name, process ID, thread ID, etc. Okay. So now finally, the last thing which I'll show you is how we can change the log level. So if you see the minimum, when you are in development, information logging is necessary for you, but specifically when you are in production, I prefer changing this to warning so that unnecessary requests are not logged and your log is clean and it only logs if there is any error. So now when you execute this, it should only give you if there is any error. So let me show you that. So now if you check the log file, it's not yet created because there's no error. Let's try to introduce an error. So what I will do is I will just switch the SQL service off so that we have an unhandled exception which fails when we are trying to make a query. So I have stopped the SQL service now. So a query should fail while connecting to the database. So let's try to get an employee now or get companies. So it should fail. We should get a 500 response here. And let's then check if it logs that error. So if you see, it's logging perfectly fine. We've got an unexpected error, which is the error code, and it says network related. Yeah, so this is the SQL error. So let's check the log now. And if you see, it has perfectly logged it. So it will now only log the error log levels. So that way you could have a bare minimum logging in production. Okay. So I think we've covered a lot of uh, items related to logging. You can check the official documentation of Serilog. I'll put the links in the description. So there are various syncs which you can configure. So you can check that out. And that's it from this tutorial. Bye-bye.